My name is Kris Piotrowski. I'm the creative director at Capy. Can everyone hear me well? I'm not sure with this mic. Yeah. Hello. Oh, that's better. Um, this is a game called Below. I'm not going to do too much talking. I'm just mostly going to play the game for, I guess, as far as I can get based on my skill level. It's kind of roguelike-y. It's kind of adventure gamey. There's not a lot of there's no text or anything like that, so it's mostly kind of like a little solitary journey into the depths of a forbidden isle. And I'll play a bit and maybe say some stuff while I play. And if you guys have any questions afterwards, or like when the game crashes, we can take a little Q&A. And that's about it. I'm going to play from over there because there's some sort of they screwed up.
This one's on me.
I'm just kidding.
It's technology. It's too much.
This is actually a really nice way to play this game if you guys have this at home. The perspective really and scale really lend itself to a movie theater experience. This mic's a bit wobbly. Is there a way we can get the volume up a little bit? That's perfect. All right. Can the volume for the game go up like a couple more notches? So in this game, you play a little wanderer. Every time you die, you're a new wanderer appearing on islands, kind of beginning or continuing the quest after the previous character's death. So the world has persistence to it, but life to life, you're just a little fleeting speck. There's a little bit of crafting in it, but it's not like a crafting heavy game. It's more of a support system. Is the volume good back there, or do you guys want it a bit louder? Good. There's no narrative spoilers in this demo, so don't worry about that. The game was actually heavily inspired by Captain Toad. Mixed, of course, with Dark Souls. music in the game is by Jim Guthrie. I worked with him previously on Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery. He recently just did the Planet Coaster soundtrack, which is really delightful as well. There's a secret little bottle back here. Just pro tip. In the corner, you can see a little thirst and hunger icon. There's also a little dash of survival aspects in the game. For demo purposes, we put a lot of food everywhere. In the final game, it's a little bit more sparse. Here I just open up a little shortcut for myself, just in case I die, so that I don't have to backtrack through everything. We're back at the beach. So this from this point on, the levels are randomly generated. The game is a combination of randomly generated areas mixed with sort of like more handcrafted sections and little moments. I guess the closest kind of analog to it might be Sharon the Wanderer, which is a Japanese roguelike that kind of has a similar format, kind of nicely merges the feeling of like a handcrafted world with randomly like connections between random areas. Anyway. The health is built around this little bleeding mechanic, so every time you get hit, you sort of begin to bleed. And one of the little ways that you can handle that is to Rambo-style cauterize your wounds. Those grunts are too loud. Enemies are generally afraid of fire, so when you light those little pillars, you kind of create a little safe spot. For some reason, there's band-aids in the game. That didn't go well. So one of the kind of key things about the game is that the lantern is a persistent, unique item. So it's sort of this game's Ocarina of Time in that a lot of the sort of main quest aspects are built around that object. And so when you lose it, when one wanderer goes into the world and then you loses this little guiding light that's been sort of showing you what traps look like and helpful to open special doors, you have to kind of go back into the world and find that lantern, pick it up. Bit of a kind of baton sort of system. It's sort of Soulsian in that you have to kind of like get back to the thing that you dropped, except that I feel like it's a lot more malicious in that you could go really deep into the world and lose this lantern, and that's sort of where the real below begins. The moments without the lantern are sort of the higher tension. The world just gets darker and more difficult. But then there's nice relief when you do find that lantern. Try my best to fast track to that spot without dying. Feel free to take a nap. when you're out of fire, you can create a little checkpoint, but it's a one-use checkpoint. So if you die, you can actually teleport directly to the last place that you create a checkpoint from any fire. But once you use that, it gets exhausted, and you're sort of continuously pushed further deeper into the world. So the lantern we dropped is on this level somewhere. Cauterizing isn't the only way to solve the problem. It's just the easiest one right now. Oops, there's a duplication bug. As you play the game, you're always going deeper into the interior of the game world, but at the same time, you're sort of finding little shortcuts that unlock connections to the plateau and the island's surface. So when you die, and you're always kind of unlocking different ways to get back to where you were, sort of just. The game's a total bummer, by the way. I mean, obviously you can see. killed him for nothing. The soup crafting is an analog system, which basically means that if you put any 3 ingredients into a bottle of water by the fire, it'll turn into like the default potion. So at the beginning of the game, you'll be making a lot of that, but within that system, there's hidden combinations that equate to a variety of buffs. But you can always just throw anything you want into a fire, and the soup gives you hunger, thirst, and one of the more important other stats is temperature. As you get deeper into the game world becomes darker, colder, and more devoid of life. And so deeper into the world, it becomes really about what's in your backpack, how you've prepared for that part of the journey. And there's also some malicious crafting stuff, so if you put the wrong ingredients together, you might croak. But that's a roguelike type thing. You have to sort of throw some curveballs in there so that people can learn like which mushroom is the one that kills you immediately. I'll just keep playing for a little bit, but I think Adam's going to open it up a little bit to QA. I can't see anybody, but I'll answer any questions.
So I'm noticing some sort of traditional roguelike elements here. There's sort of a hunger and a thirst mechanic.
Yeah.
Where do those come from? That's a very traditional roguey thing, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, hunger and thirst, I think, is just sort of like the default standard survival mechanics, and also obviously they're very kind of natural mechanics as well. People understand them. So for a game like this, just having stuff that people can parse very easily, like, I mean, obviously we all get hungry, we all get thirsty, and we all get cold, I suppose. But yeah, it was just, I really wanted to sort of create a very sort of light version of survival and a light version of crafting to just like support the exploration and combat mechanics, which are more key to the game. Hold on, I'm gonna stop talking because this guy's a tough for me. There we go. Did I answer that question even? I don't know.
You did. Good job.
Oh, thanks.
Got another one up here at the end.
So, this is switched on, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I want to say that the atmosphere you create with this through environmental effects, smoke, and shadow, and light, and focus, and it's kind of blown me away in a way I haven't felt blown away watching a game since maybe Limbo. It's I guess cinematography is the closest word I can find to it. To get all of that right, was it a feeling out process? Did you have an idea of the feeling that you were going to look for, and was there a lot of experimentation, or did you know exactly what you needed to put in there, and it was just a case of implementing all of these things? I'm fascinated by the process of that.
Well, early on, there was a couple things that, like from the very beginning, that was kind of set in stone, like the scale and the perspective of the game. The idea of sort of creating a game where a single dungeon room is like basically kind of like an HD screen. So I really kind of like the idea. I was really influenced actually by Pixel Jam, the Pixel Jam series, because that's sort of the first time where I saw that you can kind of work with a different scale on a higher resolution screen. So I was kind of fascinated with that aspect of just like having a little tiny character crawl through one corner of the monitor to the other. I think there's just something nice and satisfying about that. But then also, I think, I don't know, just generally I feel like dungeon crawlers kind of have like so much like weirdly symbolic stuff to them. And so, I don't know, when you pull the camera back a little bit, it becomes a little bit more about the environment than about the character. But also it's, I don't know, it feels a little bit more lonely in an interesting way, I think. But the visuals that you see here are, I think, the result of just like endless iteration on a kind of like a goal, as opposed to like knowing exactly what it is that is making them good or bad. But yeah, we always wanted to work with the fog of war in kind of an interesting way, and tilt shift was definitely part of it, because at this scale you get this like kind of like almost uncanny little miniaturization effect that, like, the stuff that falls into the tilt shift just looks like weirdly real, and in a way that makes me very happy. So yeah, it was just like a whole bunch of goals that we honestly just spent a crap load of time doing the wrong way, and from that kind of figuring out exactly what works and what variables we need to focus on and tweak to kind of arrive at the kind of feeling that we want. Also, I mean, coming out of Sorcery and working with Craig Adams, that was a really big. Obviously, if you finish a project, there's a little bit of that still left around in your brain. So I kind of was also influenced by Craig's work as well. And he has an astonishing ability to create atmosphere, and yeah, going through that project kind of helped me, come up with the visual goal a little bit more clearly than I guess I wouldn't have had that perspective if that project didn't exist in my past, I suppose.
Chris, in your fog of war, it looked, actually, I can kind of see it now. Do you have some, like, 16 millimeter film grain, like film leader grain going on over your fog? There was some, like,
yeah,
dust.
film grain has been we've actually been using film grain a little bit just to kind of reduce the banding because the game is just gets perpetually darker, and depending on the kind of monitor you have, it might throw the visuals out of whack a little bit. But I've been sort of battling with the artists about removing the film grain just because I sort of hate it when game developers lean on film for any sort of, I don't know, adding film grain to a game is sort of like you're not confident enough in your own, in the video game-ness of your visuals that you have to apply like a whole other aspect, like a aesthetic sort of texture that makes people sort of think about higher quality art or something like that because it's filmic or I don't know. I don't know. Film grain's kind of ugly. But yeah, there's some there now. But I kind of feel like by the time we're done, it's not going to be there, and I'm going to win that argument.
Hi, I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the combat a little bit more, because it seems like it's a very risky situation, but from this side, it's hard to tell where the risks are and when you'll get stomped and when you won't, and when you can just slash at every enemy and kill them before they can hurt you.
Well, I guess one thing is I've been playing the game for longer than I've played any other game in my life, and I sank over 400 hours into Breath of the Wild. So I'm pretty good at it. So I guess what you're seeing here is like a person who understands the timing of the enemy. So I'm doing a lot of like fancy dodging that just takes a little bit longer for other people to figure out. But I really wanted to. My biggest inspiration for combat is Wind Waker, which I kind of like where that game falls because it has this sort of like snappy technical combat that games like Dark Souls also like recently repopularized. But it's just like a little bit more snappy and more forgiving. I really didn't want to make a game that was like so high stakes and so about the combat. But yeah, the enemies, there's a very high risk anytime you engage with even a small enemy because of the bleeding mechanic. You sort of just have that little vessel of blood that is continuously being drained. But yeah, I guess I'm kind of getting an impression of maybe the game's not quite as... the game's much more difficult than it seems. But I think it's fair. Oops, there's a collision bug there.
Gasp.
Chris, this game is so ridiculously beautiful. It's offensive. Thank you so much for showing us below, dude.
Thanks.
This has been amazing. I think in interest of finishing Nidhogg 2 before tomorrow, we're going to start changing over to tournament mode.
Sounds good. I was trying to get to, there's an just to throw it back to another talk, there's an aqueduct in my game too. And I was really trying hard to get to it. And I'm very happy with it. It's like a multi-arch aqueduct, ancient aqueduct structure. But anyway, there's an aqueduct in the game. So that's 4 games today.
Is there someplace people can go to stay up to date on news about this thing?
Yeah. There's a website. It's whatliesbelow.com. You can also follow Capy Games on Twitter or Tumblr. I'm Kris Piotrowski at Twitter. Unfortunately, I don't have any sort of good news on the launch or anything, but I will just say that we've like circumnavigated the game world and all the systems, so it's all there. We just have to finish it, and it's coming sooner than later now. I mean, relative to its production.
Well put. Well put. Thank you again, Chris. Everybody, this is Below.